Talking Industry, topical debate from the worlds of automation, manufacturing and engineering. Brought to you by DFA Manufacturing Media.
Welcome to Talking Industry Live. My name is Andy Pye. I'm consultant editor at DFA Media. We publish a number of magazines and publications, including a new one called Smart Futures, so that's very relevant to this activity. Just a bit of explanation about what Talking Industry is. Up to now it's always been an online product, so this is our first foray into actually having a real live audience sitting on seats. We've never done this before, but we've done it through Zoom and through chat, and it's been very successful. We started it during lockdown. We've done 10 to date. Unlike conventional webinars, the idea is it's a panel discussion with as much interaction from the audience as we can possibly muster. So I'll be asking a few questions about, how advanced you are, what your interests are, encouraging you to ask questions throughout rather than just leaving questions to the end. And so within that we'll have 4 subtopics on the subject, and then after each subtopic we'll encourage a bit of debate before we go on to the next one. The overall topic is called Adapting to the Smart Era, and it could equally be called Not Adapting to the Smart Era, I guess, because it just depends how far advanced everybody is in their progress through smart technology on their journey. So, do we have anyone in the audience who is already utilising smart technology in their businesses? No? Okay, well, Not Adapting to the Smart Era is probably a better title then. And how many of you think you might be planning something in the foreseeable future? So you don't know by the sound of it. All right, well, hopefully then we'll be on an education path today, and we'll try not to bamboozle you too much with technology, and to try to show you how to introduce smart technology in a manageable way. I have 4 excellent panelists, and I'm going to introduce them in reverse order, so that the last one will be the first one to speak. And an old friend of Talking Industry, Nikesh Mistry, gets the 4th place today, and he's sector head of industrial automation at Gambika, and he'll be talking about the SME community and the extent to which they're using smart technologies so far, and also reflecting on what the other speakers before him have had to say. We actually have 2 Lewises today. I haven't DNA tested either of them, so we assume they're not related. Nick Lewis has a very interesting technology about software-based private 5G networks, so he'll tell you all about that and how that can be utilised in developing smart technology. Phil Lewis is going to explain how to start with an end point in mind and utilise smart technology to build businesses and generate revenue. And first but not least will be Kevin Smith, who is the lead IDT advisor for Made Smarter, and he also works for an organisation called Growth Company Limited. So he's going to start us off with starting the smart journey. So over to you, Kevin, for your 5-minute presentation. And let's get the mic. We haven't got the mic on at the moment.
Are we on? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the invite, Andy. So I'm just going to say a few words on the topic of starting the smart journey. So I work for Made Smarter. We're an industry-backed and government-backed program of support for manufacturing SMEs, sort of made up of 3 component parts. First part is innovation, so that's, if you look around you, all this great technology, it's kind of making that happen. Second part is adoption, so it's actually making all this great technology useful and usable by the manufacturing community. And the third part is a sort of subset of that is leadership and skills. So what skills do manufacturing SMEs need to bring into their business to make this adoption happen. So I thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of what we've found out so far about the state of the industry. So in a recent survey we ran, we found out that manufacturers' attitudes to investing in technology, 62% of companies we surveyed recognise the need to do this, and 81% of them are happy to take some sort of calculated risk when it comes to investing in technologies. Obviously, there's a lot of disruptive forces happening at the moment, things like Brexit, the COVID pandemic. The survey we completed since then was sort of 75% of manufacturers are looking to invest in technologies post-COVID. So what are the sort of barriers to stopping them doing that? We found out that the main kind of barrier is, the biggest barrier is lack of capital to invest in technologies, but also some other challenges around the time and the lack of knowledge. And then we sort of, in our survey as well, what are the manufacturers' motivations to invest in technology? 52% of businesses are motivated to invest by improving productivity. So that's kind of the state of the industry at the moment. And now what we do at Made Smarter is work with those companies to help bring those technologies into their business. First things we found out is that most of the manufacturers we work with are further behind on the adoption than we maybe first thought when we started out. They don't have any kind of digital strategy in place as part of their overall business strategy. They don't really know where to go to start out or where to start even, and they're really lacking those skills and expertise. So to help them taking the first step and start their manufacturing journey, what we'll do is we'll work with them to assess their kind of digital readiness through, we run a workshop program as a diagnostic tool. We'll help engage their staff, get buy-in across the business, help them nominate what we call a digital champion, so someone to lead change. And we'll offer independent expert advice. So we're agnostic. We don't recommend one supplier over another. And we make sure that digital is part of their ongoing strategy. So we've worked across the Northwest. We're also rolling it out to other areas as well, so the Northeast, the Southwest, and also Yorkshire and Humber. And if you want to get involved, visit madesmart.co.uk.
Thank you very much. You're obviously quite geographical in the way that you've prioritised. Is there? There's obviously strategy behind that. Is where you see the most potential, and you're working from there. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, our agenda is really set by the government funding. But yes, those areas are probably the areas that are identified in the Made Smarter review as needing the most support or the most opportunity. So that's where we're targeting.
And from your experience, where do we sit relative to other countries that would be our competitors, and how are we going to address that?
So, I think Industry 4 is a great vision, but it still is a vision. We're a long way, I would say, behind. We've got a lot to do, and I think the work we're doing at Made Smarter is laying the foundations, really, and helping the UK catch up a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to ask the rest of the panel for their perception of that question as well. Where do they see the UK, in terms of... So I'll start with Nick, actually, and get him to comment, because I know you've got quite a lot of international experience.
I was going to cover this in a quick introduction, but I think it's a good time to put it right now. So basically, there's a bit of a dichotomy going on, because the UK government was actually one of the first governments to actually allocate private 5G spectrum, which basically means that the manufacturer actually owns that portion of the bandwidth, which means no one else can have it. But on the second hand, and it really pains me, having been born and bred here, to see Britain so far behind, as far as the adoption's going. So, for example, we see in Taiwan and Germany that they've gone from lab to shop floor with implementations of smart manufacturing, automation, in quite a really heavy way. For example, I can't really mention the name of the manufacturer, but it's an automotive manufacturer in Germany. You can pick whichever one you think it is, who have run an entire plant on a private 5G network that is running cameras, robots, AGVs, all computed on the edge with AI, and that's being rolled out right now as we speak. A factory in Taiwan, same thing, completely automated, with a flexi floor, which means they can move machinery seamlessly from line to line, extend the line, retract the line, whatever they want to do. The good news is that Britain's not as far behind as the US, for example, where the government there is still debating over which bandwidth and how the bandwidth's going to work. So I mean, there is a bit of a broad spectrum that's going on. Yes, far behind a couple of countries. I think the next country that's going to come out even before Britain, on the journey, is France. By the way, it's looking right now. But I think the interest has started. I mean, usually the first questions that people ask is about the tax and the funding and how they can get taxed. So once people are asking about tax, the next question they ask is like what they can use the money for. Usually the next question is health and safety before production, which is quite interesting. So we see like the first use cases being like based around cameras and health and safety, and then moving out into full automation. So I would say that Britain's around 18 months behind right now. It should be the first lab cases coming out like this year.
Fabulous. That's really interesting, and you've given me a couple of hints to questions that we can cover a bit later on, which makes my job easier. Nikesh, would you like to comment on that original question?
Yes, actually. So I'm from Gambika. We're a trade association and represent about over 240 companies, ranging from large multinationals to smaller bands and quite a large number of SMEs in the UK. And commonly, we speak to SMEs about their journey, the steps that they're taking to digital transformation, if you like. And we are finding that, yes, the UK is very significantly behind the rest of the world at the moment. But there are a few positives that are coming out. One of them, even though the pandemic wasn't a positive situation, what did come out of it for these SMEs was positive, and that is a sort of acceleration towards digital transformation. Many of the businesses that we speak to had a lot of quick decisions to make overnight, where they couldn't be on site, they couldn't visit customers' machines, they couldn't access some of the data that they could previously do when they were on site. So immediately overnight they had to come up with new digital solutions and use these newer digital technologies to actually keep their businesses going. And what we found was they did it really successfully. It was a tough time, but they really prospered through it. And we do statistics collections all the time for our member companies, and we've seen positive growth from 2021 on 2020. 2020, yes, that was a hard time for them all. But what we saw in last year in 2021 was positive growth for the whole industrial automation membership that we have. And we like to think we cover about 75% of the industry sector, so a fair amount. And it was positive growth that could be seen. So yes, while adoption is slow, for those who are adopting, we can say that they are seeing good benefits from the adoption of technology. So if other businesses can look at them and say, this is what they're doing, this is what they've achieved, they feel that comfortable that they can do a similar sort of thing. So positivity in that sense.
Do you have targets that you set for the level of growth in the future, or
we don't? No, we monitor it. We just get together and discuss it. We don't have targets. I mean, it's just a way of looking at where the industry is going, looking at the trends, and it's just a nice way for. I mean, we sit with a bunch of competitors in the room at the same time. So, but one thing which is really nice to see is they've all got the same business goal or best practice goal, and that is for UK manufacturing to prosper at the end of the day. So regardless of whether they're sitting in a room or competing at the same time, the main target is, yes, we need to invest in our in our businesses, we need to make UK more internationally competitive, and the best way to do that is to come to agreements for best practice amongst ourselves.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll pass the question now to Phil, and I do apologise that I was so carried away with having two Lewises on the panel that I forgot to tell you that he's Senior Vice President, Solution Consulting International of Infor. So hopefully I've put that right. And if you'd like to answer the question that I posed and then lead into your presentation after that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Andy. Just get the microphone working here. Yeah. Number one.
Testing, testing.
Number one.
Seem to have a few microphone challenges. Try it now. I think we've put...
Hello. Shall I use yours? Yeah, thank you, Andy. So good morning, everybody. My name is Phil Lewis. I represent a company called Infor. And Infor is a global provider of cloud-based applications and technology. In case you're interested later on in the day, we're right behind you, well, right behind me on the stand next door. So please feel free to come along and say hello. Following up on the conversation that we've just had, Infor has a slightly different perspective because we actually work with manufacturing customers all around the world. We have 70,000 customers all around the world. So that really gives us excellent insight into the adoption of digital and how fast it is happening, country by country, region by region. And we do see that the UK is potentially behind other countries, like some Far East countries and the likes of Germany. But we also see a huge desire to catch up fast. And if you think about what we do, customers come to us, prospects come to us. 5 years ago, it used to be a list of functional requirements. This is what we need your product to do. This is how we want to run our business. And it was very much based around features and functions and supporting what we do today. We've seen a huge change, actually, in the questions that people are now asking us. And yet, of course, some of that is about what we do today and making sure that your applications and your cloud services can support our business today. But there is a significant focus on what happens next. And I was having a conversation earlier with some of my colleagues, and customers now are saying, 5 years ago, deploying a new ERP system or deploying a new piece of application software was almost seen as the destination, whereas now it's very much seen as the first step of a journey. And that journey involves, yes, deploying new pieces of software and technology to get control of what they do today, but also making sure that they're deploying applications that give them agility and flexibility for the future. So they're as focused around future-proofing their business from a digital perspective and thinking about control is one thing, but how do I optimize that? And how do I actually end up transforming my business for the future? So, many of those inquiries are coming from UK customers. So I see over the next sort of 2 to 3 years that we will be playing catch up because there is absolutely a hunger, a desire to really embrace digital technology and to make the most of it. So moving on then, so as we said, Phil Lewis, working for a company called Infor. We are quite unusual actually as a software provider where we do not believe that one size fits all, where many of our competitors believe that they can sell an ERP system to an automotive company on a Monday and the same system to a food and beverage company on a Tuesday, and that will be fine. We all know what happens in that scenario with generic systems. You end up having to modify for your industry requirements. You have to end up modifying for your last mile industry requirements, whereas Infor, we have built a portfolio of industry-specific cloud solutions. So we have cloud services for automotive companies and cloud services for food and beverage companies and aerospace and defense. And every one of those cloud services is built on a platform that we call Infor OS. And Infor OS is an integrated digital platform with many of the technologies that we'll be talking about today, such as IoT, such as big data management, such as AI and machine learning, such as predictive and prescriptive analytics, built into that platform. So, Infor customers are certainly benefiting from that, because when they're thinking about what they want to do from a digital perspective, they don't need to think about where do I get the technology from, which one do I select, how do I integrate that, how do I make it work. It's already there. It's hardwired, it's connected, it's ready to use. So actually, the time to value from a digital perspective with Infor is actually shortened because of the way that we've structured our cloud solutions. And we do a lot of work around the world with customers around reimagining their businesses and actually redefining their future version of themselves from a digital perspective. And one of the points that I made to Andy a couple of weeks ago is that we have a saying at Infor that our customers need to start with the end in mind. It's fine talking about digital technology. It's fine talking about what this stuff does. But before you actually start using it in your business, you really have to have a clear vision of what you want it to do. You have to understand the outcome and the impact of what it is, so that start with the end in mind. And we quite often find that establishing the end, establishing the vision for your organization does not start with the technology, it starts with your people. And the people within your organization and the culture of change within your organization is probably as important as the technology that you choose to use. So we work very closely with our customers doing design thinking and ideation sessions where we pull people together from across their business, from senior management, from mid-management, from the shop floor, from supply chain, from across the organization, and we stick them in a room for 3 days with some of our design thinking people and our digital experts, and we actually say, forget about what you know today about your business and think about your identity today and your identity tomorrow, and what sort of organization do you want to become tomorrow. And once they establish that future vision, they can work backwards from that future vision and start to understand the technology that they should use. So I think one of the common mistakes that we see is where people start with the technology rather than starting with the vision. And we would always encourage our customers to get the right people in the room with the right people of Infor to really build their go-forward future vision, and that will define the technology that you should use.
That's really interesting. I mean, the one thing about technology is it never speaks back, does it? Yeah. People do, and I mean, people are a heck of a challenge, aren't they? Especially if you want to implement change. I suppose what you're describing is in effect is a form of business plan. Does it include figures and costs and timescales and all the other aspects of a business plan?
Well, absolutely. I used the term earlier, business outcomes. And in the world of software now, it used to be acceptable to give yourself a pat on the back when you went live after an implementation and you actually got a piece of software up and running. People now see that as the first step of the journey, and people are more focused around what's the impact of this technology, what's the impact of this software. And the impact really from our perspective is how will we improve your business? And the way that we improve your business is by delivering business outcomes. And business outcomes, when delivered, will have an element of value associated with them. And when there's an element of value associated with something, we can measure that. So we can define KPIs, and it may well be that we define 15 business outcomes. And we will focus everything that we do on delivering those business outcomes. And some of those outcomes will be as standard within the product, but some of those outcomes will need digital capabilities to be delivered. It may be something that we do from an analytics perspective, or something that we do from an AI perspective, or a machine learning perspective, but we will measure that and make sure that that is what we deliver to the customer. So it's not just about switching on technology or switching on a capability, it's actually about measuring the outcome and measuring the value created for for the customer. So yeah, absolutely vital to have KPIs that we manage and then measure.
Excellent. Well, we'll park that for a minute, and we'll probably come back to it generally a little bit later on. Before I invite Nick to describe in more detail his 5G private networks and how it's an option in terms of technology and how it compares with other options, are there any questions from the audience at this stage about the sort of general side of starting with smart and achieving business outcomes? Because very happy to take some questions first.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, just a general one. We talked about the UK being behind much of the rest of the world in terms of digital journey. Do we have any thoughts as to why that is? Because surely understanding the why is critical to then trying to help with the catch-up.
I mean, I could answer the question in a very cynical way, which is, like, why did Britain leave Europe? I mean, there's a number of questions. I think there's an inherent cultural issue about giving up control. I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it as it is. And being able to move on. I think there's a little bit of I don't want to be like the rest of Europe. I am British, and I'll do things the British way. Do I think it's wrong? A little bit. Do I think it could have a benefit in the long term? Possibly. The good news is, I mean, as you said, when Britain decides it's going to do it, it's going to do it. And it's going to happen. But I think the benefits of it is to actually what we see is each country that adopts new technologies and smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0 learns from its predecessors as well. So the actual rate of change becomes a lot quicker and a lot smoother, especially when we, from our perspective, we work on an open community of private 5G. So we see use cases being developed, like how you're supposed to connect a camera to the network, and that's already off the shelf. So you just take it and move. We deploy on Microsoft Azure, so you can deploy our software from the cloud. Everything's already been taken into place. So I think there's, although it's a little bit behind, I think the potential is much higher. I think the potential is strong.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think maybe there's a tendency not to reach out and broaden horizons. I think found UK manufacturers are very much focused on the day-to-day, getting things done. And actually, one of the comments earlier about the pandemic and some of the positive effects that have come out of that, actually we found that was a chance for manufacturers to sort of take a step outside their everyday, think a bit more strategically about how they will move forwards, and make the decisions to change. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I think just
Phil.
to echo what the guys have said here, I think we are, we're naturally cautious as a nation, and I think we always have been. Other countries have always been open to trying new things and becoming early adopters of technology. If you think about that scenario where it sounds like a joke, but it's not. There's a Swede, there's a German, and there's an English guy, and they're all trying something new. When that question comes along, who's going to go first? It will never be the English guy. He will go, no, you go first, and I'll see what you do, and I'll learn from that. And I think, there is an element of that. I think there is also some benefit in being, not going first and actually looking at what other people are doing and looking at some of the mistakes and pitfalls that people fall into and actually course correcting so that it's far easier for us to roll it out. So sit back, observe, and then do the right thing. So I think that's kind of the way that we operate as a country anyway.
Thank you. Well, the pioneers are always the ones with the arrows in their backs, I think it said, isn't it? Sorry, yes.
I understand what everyone's saying about watching, learning and going better. Not necessarily proof point. If you look at the smart meter rollout that we sat and watched the rest of Europe do and do properly by putting the onus on the network providers to give consistency, we followed on and got it all wrong by putting the onus on the energy suppliers and made a right mess of it. So in that case, one instance of sitting, waiting and watching, definitely not learning from other people, I think. But point taken.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't resist, after all this discussion about Europe, to ask Marcus what he thinks our competitive position compared to Germany might be, and what your sort of perception is.
At first, yeah, Germany is really part of the European Union. That means we can take part on the European regulations and standardization. And therefore, I would say, in general, also there are some standardization committees regarding this direction, for example, smart manufacturing. So I think there are some developments in this direction which are driven from some German companies in the automation business, definitely, yes. And we see also, so I would say it's as it is still part of the European Union, it has a better position because that is an advantage.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Okay, well, if anyone wants to comment further, otherwise we'll go on to Nick and for your presentation, Nick.
Okay, so I'll try and keep this brief and at ground level. Basically, ASOX provides private 5G software for management of a private 5G network. Okay, it's an alternative to fiber or to Wi-Fi, to make it as simple as possible. The advantages are based around reliability, performance, and security. Security I spoke about earlier. Basically, everything's on premise. It's a private network, which means you own your allocation of the bandwidth. None of the data leaves your premise. Everything's done on premise. When it comes to reliability and performance, the performance of 5G is as good as fiber without having the cables. So everything's completely mobile. So an example of a factory that wants to use a flexi floor where they want to be able to move machinery from one part of the factory to another, seamlessly integrated into a line. It's plausible, it's possible. Now there's no need to rewire. AGVs, drones, digital twins, AR can all run on a private 5G network because the speeds are so strong and the latency is so low. So you're actually having real-time AI computation happening on premise at the edge. So you can take a non-smart camera, point it at something, have AI compute whatever you need, and send back a message to another device. Classic example, quality assurance. You have a camera above the line, defect, tells the robot to push the defect off the line. That simple. Another example we've been using is to take things like to a level where people didn't even realize. So when we go through a process with a new factory, we do what we call a simulation workshop, where we sit down with an integrator and the plant manager, and we just talk in general about what they need. And we say, don't limit what you think, but let's start with something small. Let's start with a first case, something that kind of makes sense. So, for example, we were talking with a factory in Germany, and they said, whatever you do, don't touch my red button. Don't touch my red button. Okay, we don't want to touch your red button. We don't need to touch your red button. The red button's yours. But they had like a camera, for example, on their waist. And initially they said, okay, we want it for health and safety, which is a regular idea, which is to say, I want a camera. It's pointing at the area. Anyone who's walking through without safety goggles and a helmet on, I want an alert to go to the shift manager on his device. I want an alert to go to them, and so forth. And then the guy who was standing on the booth says, I'd really like to know how much waste I've got. So we say, that's not a problem. You have AI. Based on what we see through the 8K image, we can tell you how much waste you have there. Not just that, but telling you also, by the way it glistens, what the makeup of the waste is. And also, based on that, if we know how much there is and what's in it, we can also tell you if your line is performing to peak performance or not. It's just an example, but basically what we would suggest is to start with what we would call a lighthouse project, which is a single project that proves a case and shows the ROI. And based on that, you have the roadmap to go forward and then to expand more and more into what you want to do. It's not change everything overnight. It's let's show you that it works and then go forward from there step by step.
Thank you.
I'm
So-
sure there's lots of questions about 5G and private 5G and lots of conspiracies and, you know, about it causing COVID and stuff. But I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, I think it's easier for me to answer questions about private 5G than it is to actually explain it.
Does anyone in the audience want to ask a question about private 5G, or indeed any of the panelists?
I have a question actually. We see a desire of more and more customers to instrument as much of their assets and plant and heavy equipment and capital investments within their organisation to really tap into the data that those things are providing. I'm assuming that instrumenting an asset using 5G is a capability that can be done. My question is, these assets generate stacks and stacks of data. So I'm assuming that data just goes into somebody's data lake or into their repository or into their data warehouse, and that's not anything that you worry about too much. You just worry about the connectivity and moving the data from A to B. Is that correct?
Firstly, with regards to devices and connectivity to a network, if it's not 5G ready, which a lot of machinery isn't, but it is internet ready in some way, then we can attach what's called a CPE, which then converts it into 5G ready. That's not an issue. Yes, we predominantly only deal with the data connectivity, particularly between the device and the edge for the initial computation, but also like out to the cloud, and into the data lake, and then whatever needs to come back down through, obviously we make sure that it happens as well. But yeah, it's an interesting field in general, because some of the data is real time and some of the data you don't need real time. For the non-real time data, I wouldn't say that 5G is what you really need, or a private 5G. But where you do need mobility and real-time data analysis, then 5G has a definite advantage.
Got it. Thank you.
I think there's quite an interesting kind of perception between the two Lewises, if I may put it that way. Whether you were talking, Phil, about starting with a vision, which is a sort of grand overarching concept, whereas Nick is talking about small implementations of solving individual problems. Are they complementary, or are they competitive?
I think they're complementary. I mean, I don't say you shouldn't have an end vision. I think vision is like everything. When you look at the best companies in the world, they always have like a strong vision in place. But the flip side is to say, okay, now I have this end goal, and I know this is where I want to be in 5-10 years' time. Where do I start? And the starting point is that small step. That first win and that first understanding of my ROI. Because you're going to put money, even if you get like 30% of it back on your tax credits, you're still putting money down on the table, and you want to see like where you're going to get that money back. And I think that's important.
Yeah, all of these things are complementary, absolutely. Whether it's software, whether it's hardware, whatever it is, the trick is how you combine it and how you make it work for your organisation. And I had a light bulb moment listening to Nick there. But we have a customer in Germany called Grappa, and they build power substations. So they use our software to manufacture those power substations, and they have been seen for the last 130 years as the substation company in Germany. Now, their CEO visits us in London quite often, and the last time he came, he said that we don't want to be seen as a power company anymore. We want to be seen as a power data company. They feel that they can make new revenue streams out of the data that these substations create. How do I instrument my substation? So that's where you start to see these two worlds colliding, where you are using a typical ERP system to build the thing, but then you're using these digital capabilities to actually instrument your product and generate new forms of data and therefore new revenue opportunities. So it's how you bring it all together as a patchwork quilt of systems and products and technologies that's right for what you do.
Pieces in a jigsaw, I suppose. Yeah. Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, Nikesh, I think we're sort of over to you for business outcomes, SMEs, or anything else you want to contribute.
Well, actually, I mean, I was going to add to the complementary factor there, because it really is something that it depends on the nature of your business, and I think both what the Lewises have said are very key points in that, you know, if you've got a business that can invest on small scale, do so. You know, take the right steps. If you've got the means to invest big, then also look for your future vision. It really depends on making sure you take those right steps, and, you know, then looking at what you want to achieve without jumping the gun and just thinking, oh, I want this new technology, so I'm going to invest out of my means. You know, we come across a lot of our SMEs, and we give them a simple four-step advice when it comes to, you know, getting started on your journey. And it will be set your business objectives. You know, what is it you want to achieve by investing in smart technology? Is it better throughput? Is it carbon footprint? Is it what is it that you want to achieve? Is it, you know, there's so many different things out there that could be achieved by investing in, whether it's connectivity, whether it's digital twins, whether it's artificial intelligence, robotics, many different goals. So set your objective. And then you've got to consider your options. You've got to consider, you know, what is out there, what sort of different technologies will make that objective happen. You look at that. The third step would be to scale it to your business needs. So that's not investing outside of your means, investing in the small increments at first, and then scaling it as your business grows. And then finally bring in the experts. You know, there's the MTC, there's the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, there's Made Smarter, there's the KTN, there's systems integrators. There's so many experts out there that can help you on your journey, and that will avoid the fear of, you know, not getting started. Why we say the UK is so behind, it's because they don't know what they want to achieve. And if you bring in these experts to help you, then, you know, they can point you in the right direction. And then most of them are not-for-profit businesses, so they're not got their own, you know, targets in mind. They want manufacturing to prosper. So really and truly, it's getting the support you need, and there's lots of support out there. So yeah, using those businesses really.
Thank you very much, Nikesh. And I suppose that takes us neatly back to you, Kevin, and your comments on business outcomes.
Yeah, just, you know, we're at a panel discussion, so it's a shame to agree with everyone so much, but what these guys said, I mean, we start with a vision statement. If you do something and it doesn't in some way help you realize that vision statement, don't do it. It's as simple as that. That's your strategic decision-making framework. You know, we put together a roadmap for companies to try to help them piece together all these different moving parts. And one of the things we say is that roadmap is not set in stone. It will change over time. You'll learn by doing through small pilot projects, you know, like you advocate for. So, you know, it's just a sense of direction. It's just a sense of, you know, taking that first step and, you know, learning from it and then moving forwards.
Thank you. I mean, a couple of things that I did promise we'd come back to before we finish were R&D tax credits, which I think is a very interesting area, and then health and safety implications. But R&D, I'll tell you what I know about R&D tax credits, which isn't much, and then you can tell me what I don't know. But we actually have a client at DFA who are actually responsible for managing these. And, you know, you can get really good tax credits for design and development work. Even if it's failed, it still qualifies, you know, and it's not just basic research, it's development work of any type. So this is a factor that should really be encouraging, you know, UK businesses to get busy developing maybe small scale activities in smart and visions in smart as well. You know, and as far as I understand it, there are very similar schemes available in other countries as well. But if the panel would like to sort of comment on what they know about that, because I think we need to sort of encourage people to take it up.
Yeah, I I could add in there. There's one to begin with, which came out last year. It's called the Super Deduction Tax, and that's mainly targeted at SMEs. It's a government-based scheme, and it actually allows for 130% of your capital allowance on plant and machinery equipment. So it's something that's very new. It's running until, I think it's July 2023. So it's a two-year scheme running by the government, and it's something that we speak to a lot of our member companies to get involved with it at the moment. So I believe you can save up to about 25 pence per £1 that you spend on your R&D in plant machinery and equipment. So it's a good starter scheme. I mean, it's not the best because we do need more. You know, we need more support for our SMEs from the government. It's something we try to lobby for all the time. But you know, it's a start, and that is another way to get started. So that would be one advice I could point you in that direction, to look into the super deduction tax and look at investing in that for your business. I don't know of any other areas at the moment.
Anyone else want to comment on that aspect, or have we said it all? Yeah.
I mean, just general in terms of if you want to look for funding, we offer funding and support, 50% match funding, capped at £20,000 in the Northwest, but in other regions it's slightly different as well, to invest in, you know, these new technologies that we're talking about. So
Yeah, well, match funding would be an even more valuable contribution than a tax credit, I guess. Can you have both?
I believe you can. Don't hold me to
There we
that.
go.
Don't go out.
They'll be paying us to do this soon, which is
As long as you fit the qualifying criteria.
Right. Just finally then, what are the health and safety implications of introducing smart technology? Is it improvements or hazards, risk assessments?
I think this rolls up into the bigger picture around the hot topic right now, which is sustainability. We actually have a lot of customers coming to us, asking, number one, us to help them with their sustainability picture. But also what's Infor's position on that. And I think, when it comes to deploying smart capabilities and digital technologies, one of the driving forces is actually being able to do more with less. If you're using less energy, or you are using less resources, then that can actually be a good thing. So health and safety does roll up into that sustainability message and that environmental message. But from our perspective, it is about efficiency, it is about productivity, it is about throughput. But I think any time we can do more and be more productive with less resources, and especially less natural resources, that's got to be a good thing. So not necessarily linked to health and safety, but linked to that bigger sustainability message.
Well, I see things a little bit differently. We see a demand for the first steps into automation or into digitalization, actually on health and safety use cases first. So we see like a lot of requests using imaging, connected imaging, 8K video analysis, specifically to look at safety equipment, potential leaks, issues on the work floor, somewhere where there could be endangerment to the human side. We get that usually as the first use case that's deployed. Above and beyond. Also during COVID, the height of it, the cameras were able to actually, if they were heat sensitive, be used for heat detection, temperature checks. Yeah, so I mean that came up as well. But we definitely see like health and safety come up as a prime, and we see sustainability as a second. I think sustainability.
And you mentioned the waste management earlier. So is that a common use case that you see?
It's not that common, but we saw that. We had a factory, a chemical factory, that wanted to know which direction the smoke was blowing in out of the chimney. Apparently, if it was blowing in a certain direction, it showed a 20% inefficiency in the product line. So I mean, the sustainability and the productivity go hand in hand more. So. I mean, basically, if you're sitting by your targets, like in your reduction targets on on waste, you're probably actually becoming more profitable on your line as well. So I mean, it's like it has its advantages.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting stuff, and it all comes down to data, doesn't it? And you know, yesterday we actually had a panel, and somebody asked the question, well, who owns the data? And all the panelists said, oh, well, the customer owns the data. And so I said, well, what if the customer and the cloud facility, for example, are in different countries and they have different rules and regulations? What happens then? And that seemed to confuse a few people, but I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that on this panel.
The way we see it is on a full on-premise deployment, then the data is obvious. Like it sits with the client. But even when it goes through a cloud, like if it says like you have a portion of cloud, you're still having like, it's usually a hybrid. So you have like some of the data on-premise, which you can say, okay, that's mine. And even the stuff that goes through a public domain through a cloud, you know, it's still your data. You know, your data never leaves. The issues you might have actually on the data is more on the GDPR and the privacy. And if you're using like a camera recognition, you know, are you using facial recognition? And if you're using facial recognition, then you've really got to ask questions. But other than that, like, it's your data. I mean, if you're going through Microsoft Azure or you're going through VMware, then you own the data that's on your cloud deployment.
So are you kind of geared up for that, Phil, or is
well,
it
we
not
actually
something
think that, you know, any digital project, any transformative project, you need to get control of your data as it's the first step, you know, and data is a massive topic right now today. As I said at the start, you know, we've got 70,000 customers around the world, and data is a hot priority for all of them. Some of the studies that we've actually done, many of our customers are in manufacturing or distribution, so they have pretty complex supply chains going both ways, you know, to the customer and consumer, but also back all the way through their inbound supply chain. A great example is Nike, you know, the sportswear manufacturer. Nike is actually a combination of 15,000 independent trading partners. So how do you get visibility of your data when you're Nike? You know, typically 80% of a company's data sits outside of its four walls with its trading partners. So actually using technology and using capabilities to get that visibility of all of your data, even if it's with a supplier or a 3PL, a 4PL, or a customer or an R&D partner, actually harnessing all of that data is a really good thing to do. It's flipping difficult, but it's a really good thing to do. And once you have a control of that data and an understanding of that data, that's when you can really start to do some amazing things with it and start to exploit it and start to leverage it in digital projects, or start to you know, use AI and machine learning to join the dots across that data from a new revenue perspective. We recommend to all customers that, you know, one of the preliminary steps of any digital project that you embark upon is to make sure that you have control of your data and you understand it and you're in a position to make the most of it. It's really, really important, and that's before you get to, you know, any kind of data residency conversation and that kind of thing. It is difficult but highly beneficial when you do get control of your data.
And we could probably run a whole session on that. Kevin?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of technology evangelism around. You know, you can just sort of look around us now, and there's a tendency to think of technology as magic. So you'll buy something, switch it on, and it'll fix all your problems. Actually, you know, the number one challenge is data. Without data, none of it works. So you've got to get the data right. You've got to get it standardized. It's boring, it's messy work, but, you know, it has to be done.
Some people love it, you know.
Well, that's true.
But then the question is that, like, whether you get data fatigue, where you've got so much of it coming in. So okay, let's say you've got the data. Now you have to use the data, and it's like how you use it that becomes the big. You know, it has to be actionable items that you're getting out of your data. I'm not just collecting it for the sake of collecting it.
That's how Amazon became so big. They just collected data before everyone else did.
But you know, they had an end goal in mind with their data, which is
Controlling the world, was that?
Similar to Mr. Zuckerberg, but you know.
Right, we're coming to the end. So I'll give each of our panelists a minute just to highlight one particular takeaway that they'd like the audience to go away with. Starting with, we'll go left to right, Kevin. So you.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, that we've sort of spoken about the challenges of starting the road to digitalisation. I just wanted to highlight the fact that the support's out there, and a lot of the issues we're talking about, we're tackling them, and I think the UK is catching up. So.
We'll hold you to that in 2 years' time when we're back here, and hopefully we'll have seen a lot of progress. Nick.
Yeah. Honestly, don't panic. Change isn't that bad. It's not that painful either. Get the right kind of like advice around you, and it's coming up like the initial questions are always around taxation and money and funding. So your accountant's probably a good person to be in touch with right now. And once you have that in place, then we're happy to help you get connected. So
Change is fun. Go on, Nikesh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like an echo, but both said very good points. Get the right experts in, get the help, make sure you're not scared. Don't be scared of anything out there. We know that these technologies are not new. They've been around for years and years. Don't be scared to adopt them and get the right advice. And you'll find it's a lot easier than you think. That would be, yeah.
Thank you, Nikesh.
Yeah, not a lot to add really to what's been said. It is for a typical manufacturing company, digital transformation is a daunting prospect. The amount of technology at your disposal can be overwhelming, but as Nikesh has said, there are plenty of organisations and plenty of people and companies within this country who will only be too happy to help you on that journey. Never ever think that this is something I have to do myself. I have to figure it out myself. Bring in the experts and make sure that you understand why you're doing it. Don't do digital for the sake of it. Do it because it needs to be meaningful and deliver something of value to your organisation. But just echoing what everybody else has said.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'll draw it to an end there. Thank you very much to all of our panelists, I think, who've created an excellent discussion between them.